Whether it's a song or a new road-changing invention, intellectual property laws are put into place to protect creators of new innovations and media. These protections are necessary to prevent from the creations being stolen. When someone does steal an innovation or other creations, then it would be reported. When these are reported, enforcement agencies will take actions to stop those who are infringing on the intellectual property rights, and fines will be issued. However, what happens if intellectual property is stolen and the perpetrator is in another country? This is where the complexities of intellectual properties lies. In order to assist me with explaining the issues of intellectual properties in the international road, I interviewed Matthew Shea, a professor at West Chester University. You can start by introducing yourself.
I'm Matt Shea. I'm an associate professor here at West Chester University. I'm the coordinator for the International Business Program. I teach international strategy, business strategy, corporate strategy, compensation management.
Okay. Where did you go to college to get your degree?
My undergraduate degree was from a school called Connecticut College, different from UConn. Then I went to University of Pittsburgh to get my Master of Health Administration and a Master of Business Administration. And then I went back to Temple University to get my PhD.
Intellectual properties are ideas, products, or inventions that are created by an individual or a company that is different enough to be seen as a new creation. Professor Shea explains intellectual properties on a macroeconomic scale the best.
It's a robust question. Intellectual property is, from a macroeconomic standpoint, when we look at products, the locations that are responsible for the intellectual property behind the product or the service are the locations that get the most value in return. They're the greatest value creating components of a product or service. That is the intellectual property behind it. And intellectual property is because it's intangible, it's very easy to move across borders. So it's a quick, robust method of increasing the trade balance or increasing exports. If you can adequately capture the intellectual property and the revenue it creates, the profits it creates.
Intellectual properties are beneficial to innovation. If different companies could just reuse the same idea that was created by another company, then they would. The protection of intellectual property prevents this from being done. Since companies cannot steal the inventions that were created by other companies, they would have to innovate. Companies being prevented from stealing ideas encourage innovation. This encourages companies to create something that would be better than their competitors. These protections of intellectual properties encourages growth in the market. This growth and innovation helps the product improve and become cheaper.
There are processes to get intellectual property patented in every country. They're different. There are some international treaties and agreements that are supposed to make that process a little bit more uniform. And there's some agreements in place where countries agree to have processes for patenting and copywriting, and to not only have those processes, but monitor them and enforce them. Now, the degree of monitoring and enforcement across the globe varies, but you need to protect your patent in every single foreign market. That way you can get the benefits of your intellectual property. Otherwise, there'd be less incentive to innovate if you didn't believe that your innovation would result in your profiting.
Professor Shea referred to a process in which intellectual property patents are filed. In the United States, patents can be applied through the United States Patent and Trademark Office. An application would be filled out and the office would either approve or deny the patent. Each country has their own system for applying for patents. These patents are enforced on a per-country basis, meaning that the U.S. would enforce intellectual properties infringement in their country, and a country like Germany would enforce their intellectual properties enforcement if they are infringed upon in Germany. No country has authority over other countries. There are organizations that can assist with making the process of applying for patents within other countries easier. The problem with the patent filing process is that a patent must be filed for the intellectual property in each different country. meaning that in America, the patent you have to apply for a patent in America, and then you have to apply for a patent in Germany, and then a patent in England. That'd be done country by country. It cannot be done in one country. It must be done in all the countries that the patents wants to be applied in. This means that the process of filing patents must be done over and over for each different country. The process is tedious and costs a great deal of money. The fact that the process needs to be replicated for however many countries that the individual wants to apply for a patent in, and because it is so expensive, this means that the individual, in order to benefit from their idea, would sell it to a company who would then go and patent it in all the other countries. Companies are really the only entities that are able to apply for patents in foreign countries because they're expensive, because of the expenses that come along with applying for patents. This is where one of the issues lies. The individuals are encouraged to sell their ideas to companies because applying for patents are just too expensive. This means that companies can buy all the ideas from individuals that they want and patent them, making more money for themselves. Professor Shea keeps mentioning how since intellectual properties are ideas, they are easy to share and export to other countries. The fact that intellectual properties are so easy to export makes them just as easy to steal.
Because it's very easy to steal. The very element or the characteristic of intellectual property that makes it easy to export makes it easy to steal. So if you only, for example, if a company had intellectual property in the United States and nowhere else, it would be very easy for a foreign enterprise to come over, evaluate that intellectual property, take it back to their country, and exploit it and patent there. So Apple owns, thousands of patents. SAP owns patents. GlaxoSmithKline, even Vanguard, they all have patents, right? So if they believe one of their patents is being violated, they will also take a claim, take a legal claim forward. And they're supposed to be taking that claim forward in the country where the patent was violated. So there's a couple years ago, there was a case where Samsung and Apple got into a patent dispute, and that was resolved through the court system. So there's a legal process for it. It varies by country. Usually, it's heavily guided by the legal counsel, law firms. So a corporation, if they believe their patent's been violated, will contact internal counsel, who will then contract out with lawyers who specialize in intellectual property and patent law. And then there are those lawyers who specialize in specific countries. So if you were a U.S. company, you felt like your patent was being violated in Poland, you'd probably have your U.S. attorney, and your U.S. attorney would make contact with an office in Poland, a Polish attorney, and they would advance the cause on your behalf, on your corporation's behalf.
Okay. And, well, you were kind of mentioning it through that, but how are intellectual property disputes settled in court?
They're usually settled out of court. So you take something to court, you say we want the court to decide, but oftentimes, more often than not, the two parties will come to an agreement about how we're going to resolve this patent. Patents can be resolved in terms of it's not a violation, in case we continue as normal, and then there's an appeal process. They can be resolved by saying, all right, you've got to cease and desist your violation, and plus you've got to pay a penalty or give this company some remuneration for what you cost them. And then there can be punitive penalties. That is, this was flagrant, this was intended, so you need to stop this activity, you need to pay them, and then we're going to also push an additional penalty on you to discourage future behavior and to send a signal to other companies that might be violating the patent.
On the domestic level, patents are enforced by the agencies that are in charge of the patents. So in the U.S., it would be the United States Patent and Trademark Office. This agency would contact the individual or the company that is infringing upon the intellectual properties. As Professor Shea said, most of the time the patent and intellectual property issues are settled out of court. So there would be like threats of court, threats of suing beforehand, but it would just be settled out of court, where usually money is paid to the victim of the crime. So whichever company stole the intellectual property would pay the victim a certain amount of money, and the company that infringed upon it would discontinue the product that stole it. And so what's the issue, you may be asking yourself? Well, it was touched upon earlier in the video. The issue lies in the process of applying for patents. The process for applying for patents is expensive, which means larger companies are really the only entity that would have the resources available to apply for patents in multiple countries. Like referenced before, it would be too expensive for a single individual or a small company to get patents in multiple countries. The patent system that is in place right now encourages large companies to file patents in multiple countries, which means smaller companies and individuals would sell their ideas or intellectual properties to the larger companies, meaning that there would only be growth within the larger companies and not within the smaller business. This growth in larger companies would be leaving behind the smaller companies. This is not beneficial to the market because the smaller companies wouldn't grow, meaning that there would be more money at the top of the larger company. This would allow for larger companies to start to monopolize the market, hurting the economy. This would hurt the economy because having limited companies control the market would make the prices higher, hurting the consumers because they would need to spend more money on said product. So if the larger companies have the monopoly on the market, this means they could control the prices however they wanted, meaning if they wanted to make the prices more expensive on a certain product and they have patents worldwide, there wouldn't be any other countries to oppose them. And since those smaller companies have these patents, that means they pretty much control the market, which would not be beneficial. The other issue with patents and in the international road is other companies and individuals abroad. If a patent isn't filed in another country, then a company in the other country could steal the intellectual property and nothing can really be done about it since there's no patent filed in that country's patent office could try to use diplomacy to solve the intellectual property dispute, but if there is no patent in the country, then the company or the individual who infringes upon it is well within their rights to claim that it is their property. This is one of the main issues with the system. Solving the issue would be difficult because other countries do not want another country to have authority over it, and they want to remain completely autonomous. The only real solution would be with the United Nations controlling the patents, which then again, this would give the UN more authority over the countries of the road, which would set. I'm going to completely redo that. Right. Let's redo that. This would give the UN more authority over the countries of the world, which would set precedents for the future. But it is likely that many countries would be opposed to this solution for the same reason of autonomy. Intellectual properties in the international road is a complex issue with no clear solution. These complexities with other countries and the tedious process of applying for patents makes the issue difficult to understand and difficult to solve. Patents are important with protecting intellectual properties across the globe. These protections are the reasons that there are innovations in the market. Overall, I would say that intellectual properties and patents are a pretty good thing for the economy. Well, class, any questions?